Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliot Margolis. My co-host Gail is out sick, so you're stuck with me today. But we have a special guest today, John Deaton, who is running for the United States Senate. We don't know who his opponent's going to be. It's either going to be Markey, who's been a senator since before the turn of the century, and Seth Moulton, who has been a real disappointment as a congressman in our district. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. And I have to tell you, when I was at the Republican convention a couple of months ago, you were by far the most impressive candidate that I've seen in a long time.
Thank you.
And we have some good Republican candidates.
We do.
But you were very impressive.
I appreciate that. You know, experience is the greatest teacher. When I ran in 2024 against Elizabeth Warren, it was the first time that I'd ever run for office. And you know, I didn't pick a small mountain to try to climb. And you learn. And so hopefully I'm a better candidate than I was, you know, and that experience of running before is guided me. I'm being more me this time around and not worrying about, you know, how things fall out.
Good.
You know, and I think that people relate to authenticity more than anything.
No question in my mind about that.
But I appreciate you saying that. I really do.
And I mean it. And the people that I went with to the convention all said the same thing. So anyhow, tell everybody a little bit about you, your background, where you came from. I think that would help them relate to you.
Yeah, I have a unique experience. I don't have your traditional political background, that's for sure. I was born and raised in a town called Highland Park, Detroit, in Detroit, Michigan. And if you look it up, you'll see that it's ranked in the top worst neighborhoods in America for the last half century. The entire time that Ed Markey's been in office for 53 years, that town has been ranked in the top 10 worst for sure. And you know, there was some real struggles to show people that I'm not exaggerating. My mother was stabbed in front of me when I was 6 and almost died in front of me. At 9 to 11, unfortunately, a neighborhood child predator began abusing me and threatened to kill my mother. And that obviously, after seeing her get stabbed, really bought my silence, so to speak. I didn't speak about it for 40 years. My best friend died in drug violence and a drive-by in my arms. And I was a high school dropout for many months, my first year of high school, because I had a gun shoved in my mouth the first day of high school. But we live in the greatest country in the world, and a high school principal said he would cut the tuition in half in a suburb outside of Detroit, and if I earned it, and if I played 2 sports and maintained a good GPA and I stayed active in the church, he'd cut the tuition. Back in those days, it's 1981, so from $1,400 a year to $700 a year. And so I got a job washing dishes, and I paid my way through high school and college and law school, and made it here to Boston because I wanted to go to law school here, and I went to New England School of Law in Boston, and got to serve in the Marine Corps. In fact, I'm very proud of this. I tell people the truth. I don't think I was smart enough to get into Harvard, and I certainly couldn't afford it, but I beat out Harvard Law, BC, BU, Suffolk, to represent the United States to represent Massachusetts in the Marine Corps for the 1994 Judge Advocate Law contract. Did 7 years of active duty and got out. For 25 years, I've been representing people across Massachusetts who get mesothelioma and lung cancer. It's a rare form of cancer caused by asbestos. So for 30 years almost, I've been representing working families, plumbers, pipe fitters, shipyard workers, auto mechanics, you name it, representing them in court against multi-billion-dollar companies. And now I'm prepared to fight for those same type of working families in the U.S. Senate and bring that kind of fighting spirit that I've had all my life to help working people.
Well, you've had the experience, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, there's a lot of issues that I'd like to talk about.
Sure.
So let's start first with the illegal aliens that come into this country. Do you know how much that costs every individual taxpayer, or, I mean, cumulatively,
Well,
how much it's costing us in dollars first?
Well, yeah, you're right on track there, because there is the cost, the hard figure dollars, which are in the billions. We know for sure $4 to $5 billion in the last 4 years in hard cost, or 5 years. And then you got to think about the cost on the infrastructure. Which would include your police department, your first responders. For example, Fall River had a 700% increase in calls. Most of them because of the illegal immigration and Healy hotels and all the things that were happening. So it's a lot. This is the problem with this state, is that, we've lost critical health care. Kearney Hospital in Dorchester closed. Neshoba Valley Medical Center in Air closed. The maternity ward in Leominster closed. And Governor Healy said that there was nothing she could do to help, but then spent $4.5 billion helping the illegals. And that just makes no sense. And so, I can't tell you what the cost is per resident, but it's a lot. And just think about the billions of dollars that we spent here in Massachusetts if that would have been given to the 351 towns and cities. They wouldn't be facing the overrides that they're facing. Think about the education that could be improved. Think about the health care that could be improved. And if we'd invested that money in natural gas pipelines and small modular reactors for, small nuclear reactors across the Commonwealth, people would be paying half the electricity that they're paying right now. So.
Well, one of the things you mentioned was education, and that's one of my pet peeves, because the quality of education in this country, not only in Massachusetts, but the whole country, has gone downhill so far. It's incredible to me. And one of the reasons, from my perspective, is you've got too many people that don't speak English in the direct classroom. So teachers have to deal with people that can't speak English, and I have a solution to that problem. In the country of Israel, before you can go to school, you've got to speak Hebrew. So they have a special school. Kids learn languages very quickly. They go to what's a school called an ulpan. They learn conversational Hebrew. Then they can go to school. But in this country, you can go any language at all, and that destroys the education for the kids that do speak English. Why doesn't this country have an official language?
And when we look back at immigration, legal immigration, one of the things that people would swear to and take an oath to wasn't just to honor the country and the Constitution, but it would be to learn English. That was one of the prerequisites to becoming an immigrant to the United States on a legal basis. And so you're right. Here's the problem with our education, too, and I have standing to talk about this. I'm not speculating. I have a 7-year-old who is going into the 2nd grade in public school in Bolton, where I live. I have a 16-year-old stepdaughter, 17-year-old stepson that are in the high schools. And let me tell you something about the education today. Here in Massachusetts, our kids are being subject to what's called social-emotional learning. And I'll be honest with you, it kind of sounds nice. Just, it's a nice thing, social-emotional learning. But my position is, how about you just stick to teaching math, reading, science, history, and English, all of that, and leave the parenting to the parents. But we don't see that happening. We see the opposite of that happening. And we see where the schools are trying to supplant the parents. And actually, I see an assault on parental rights taking place across the country, but certainly here in Massachusetts as well. And so we need, and I think one factor is, obviously we had the MCAS on the ballot last time, and the teachers union has a stranglehold on our politicians here in Massachusetts. But they keep saying that Massachusetts is #1 in public education, but we're taking a hit. I'm seeing it happen in my own household.
Being #1 in a bad system is nothing to brag about.
That's true. That's a good point.
Now, the other thing is, if you don't have an official language, how many different languages do we print up ballots in? Okay, and who's paying for that? The taxpayer is paying for that. I mean, extra expenses for what purpose? I mean, when I interviewed Seth Moulton a few years ago, he said that, well, we're a country of immigrants, so we have to, take care of the immigrants, and if they don't speak English, that's okay. Well,
no, he's
we're
wrong.
the only country in the world that doesn't have an official language.
Well, Seth is wrong. It's America, and when immigrants come here, it is their duty to assimilate into American, right? I mean, Ronald Reagan gave that famous speech where, when you can go to France, but you can't become a Frenchman. Right? In all these other countries, only in America can you go to America and become an American, assuming you do it the right way, legally and all those things. And one of the things of becoming an American, there's nothing wrong with saying you need to learn English, and I don't see anything wrong with that. That's part of patriotism and this desire to become an American. And I'm someone who believes that we should expand legal immigration and reform it, maybe make it a little bit easier, but have a zero tolerance for illegal immigration. And I think it's the illegal immigration that is eating us, basically the country from the inside. In Michigan, I saw a congressman elected to the U.S. Congress at a rally in America, in Dearborn, Michigan, and they're chanting "Death to America." When I was young, you'd see something like that overseas. You might see that in Iran, or you might see that in Saudi Arabia or something like that. You wouldn't see it on American soil. Americans, including American elected leaders, saying "Death to America." And I think that we've got to get back to honoring the way it was, and the fact that becoming a U.S. citizen and living here, that dream, that goal is something to aspire to, which would include learning English and assimilating into the country.
It seems to me we've had an immigration issue for 25, 30 years that Congress knows has to be taken care of, but refuses to take care of it.
They don't want to take care of it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct. And to everyone out there, I said this in the debate against Seth Moulton a few weeks ago. Immigration is one of the areas that the career politicians intentionally use to divide America. Right? They could have reformed immigration. Seth Moulton's voted against it. Ed Markey's voted against it every single time. Ed Markey even objected to having a cap of 2,500 illegals per day enter the United States. Just think about that. He didn't want there to be any cap, right? And he thought that 2,500 per day, every day, 365 days a year, was too restrictive. But because in an election year, they get to use their slogans. 6 years ago, the big slogan was defund the police. Remember, you had the George Floyd death, and you had all that movement. Well, now Seth is using it. Ed Markey's using it. The big new slogan is abolish ICE. And that's not a policy. What you're getting at is policy. That's a slogan. That's an election year slogan. not a policy. But they're using it because they want to rile people up and they want to get people to donate to them. I'm going to abolish ICE and all of those things for election purposes.
Well, see, it brings up another question, and that is, if Congress, if the president, if the people that come into this country illegally, if they're allowed to break the laws, selective laws, why can't we? Why do I have to stop at a red light? And have to pay a fine? If they can get away with breaking the law, I'm a citizen, I'm paying the taxes.
Right.
Why can't I break the law?
Well, let me tell you how absurd since you brought up Seth Moulton, said he was disappointing. Let me show you how disappointing. He voted no, and Senator Markey was only one of 9 U.S. senators to vote no on the Lake and Riley Act. And the Lake and Riley Act, all it said is that if you commit certain crimes, if you're illegal here, if you're here illegally, and you commit the crime of shoplifting, assault on a police officer, DUI, a whole litany of crimes, then you're to be detained by ICE. You're not to be released into the community, into the neighborhood. Now remember, you're illegal and you have a DUI or shoplifting or whatever. Seth says, no, I'm voting against that because you're not affording people their full due process criminal rights. Now, what people need to understand, civil deportation is a civil process. It's not a criminal process. So what Seth is doing, by doing that, he's encouraging an illegal to come here and commit a crime. Because if they commit a crime, then they get full due process rights. Their trial won't be for 3 or 4 years. They get a court-appointed lawyer at the taxpayer expense, whereas the illegal who came here and didn't commit a crime gets deported. Like, it makes no sense at all, but we're in an election year. And so you're going to hear slogans like, abolish ICE, prosecute all the ICE agents. And I tell people this, Seth Moulton wants, and Ed Markey want Tom Homan to be prosecuted. He's the head of ICE. In 2015, he received the highest presidential award by Barack Obama for doing the very job he's doing today. Now, that's the discouragement of politics today.
Yeah, I mean, that happens a lot. I mean, President Obama deported millions of people with no due process. That was okay.
Right.
But when President Trump does it, it's not okay. The hypocrisy in government is amazing.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, though, you don't get criminal civil due process rights for a civil infraction. The only time it becomes criminal is if you come here one time illegally, you're deported. If you re-enter a second time, then it's a felony. Otherwise, it's just a misdemeanor civil infraction. And so, but yes, Barack Obama deported 3.1 million people in his 8 years. President Trump right now is less than 500,000. Just to put it in perspective of how politics is in play right now.
It's amazing. All right, let's move on to another subject, fairly similar, and that's voter ID. I'm confused, okay, because I can't go to France or England and vote. I'm not a citizen of France or England. Why is it okay for non-tax-paying, non-citizens to vote in this country? And without the voter ID, when I go to vote, oftentimes I'll just show them my license and they'll say, no, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
So I'd say, okay, this is me over here. I have no idea who that was,
Right,
but
right.
it doesn't matter. They don't know me.
Right.
So what difference does it make? And when I point out to people that certain towns had more people vote than are registered, why is that okay?
It's not okay, and there's probably no greater example of how broken our Congress is when 82% 82% of all Americans, regardless if you count everyone, 82% favor voter ID for elections. Because election integrity, if you don't have confidence in the electoral process, then do you really have democracy? Do you have a constitutional republic like ours? You have to have confidence in your elections. And so 82% of Americans want voter ID. They won't do it. Ed Markey and Seth Moulton are going to say, well, voter ID is racist. Well, 72% of black Americans favor voter ID. So give me a break, right? And here's another thing. France, pretty liberal country, requires voter ID. France banned mail-in voting in 1976 because of the potential for fraud, right? Not that there was fraud, just the mere potential, so they banned it. Norway, Australia, Canada, Turkey, Pakistan, all have required voter IDs in order to vote. Not here in America, certainly not in Massachusetts, like you said. In fact, they almost get insulted if you insist on showing your ID. But try to get a fishing license in Massachusetts, see if they ask you for your voter ID.
Yeah.
And if you want the resident discount, you better come in with a couple utility bills to prove you're a resident of that community. So you have to prove it.
See, to me, there's sort of a solution to some of this stuff. And that is, politicians want to please people so that they can get reelected time in and time out. And as we're finding out in Minneapolis or Minnesota and other California, these politicians are making an awful lot of money off of the taxpayer by stealing with fraud.
Right.
So it just seems like they promote fraud.
Well, they promote fraud and they protect fraud. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact. And everyone out there, just think of this. How often do almost 3 out of 4 people agree on anything today? Not very often, but 72% of the voters made it the law that we would be able to see the state legislature open the books. The first thing the state legislature did after that law became law was hire an attorney using your tax dollars to tell them how not to comply with the law. When you're fighting an audit that hard, that is protecting the fraud that you know is taking place. And we've seen Diana DeZaglia, who is the state auditor, a Democrat, has discovered fraud. We know that the U.S. Attorney, Lisa Foley, a Republican, has undiscovered fraud. So we know the fraud is taking place. Massachusetts has a 14% SNAP error for food stamps. Highest in the country. But they want to tell you that, no, there is no fraud. Of course there is. You know, the question is, how big is it? Is it $1 billion a year? Is it $10 billion a year?
Yeah, I mean, but it doesn't matter. It's still coming out of our pocket.
It is, and I'm pretty confident that it has a B on it. It's billions of dollars.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. I think that I've been saying for 3 years now that Massachusetts rivals California and Minnesota, in my opinion, when it comes to the level of fraud. And the fact that they won't do the audit, the fact that they fight the audit, the fact that they're trying to create new laws to stop the audit, proves that they don't want all you people out there, taxpayers, to see how they're spending your money.
Well, I'm convinced that the reason why a lot of politicians don't like President Trump is because he's trying to investigate fraud, and that's taking money out of their pockets.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, let me just say this. I've said it before. I'll say it again. The only bipartisan thing taking place in Washington is fraud and corruption. That's the only thing that's bipartisan nowadays. Both parties engage in it. You know, you could argue over whether one party is worse than the other, but they all want to protect us. That's why I tell everyone out there, we don't have an inflation problem, we have a career politician problem. I mean, we just celebrated our 250th birthday, and Ed Markey has been in office longer than a fifth of our entire country's existence. Like, that's just unbelievable. You know, our founders would have never believed that people would go to Washington and spend 20, 30, 40, 50 years in Washington.
Well, we're getting low on time. I'm going to ask you one more question, and for now, and we'll see what happens. But the line item veto. Congress rejects the line item veto. And so therefore, sometimes the president has to sign something he doesn't want to sign because of all the pork in there.
Right.
And that pork is costing us money. Shouldn't every bill stand on its own merits?
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we'll end it with this answer. My very first bill that I want to propose is called the Washington Clean Hands Act. And it's a multi-act. The first thing is it seeks term limits, constitutional amendment for term limits. It takes rid of insider trading, crypto, and stocks and all of that. But it also calls for single-issue bills. Why is a bill 1,000 pages, and why does it mix Social Security and education and Ukraine funding? It shouldn't. The Ukraine funding bill should be called the Ukraine funding bill, and it should be 5 to 10 pages that we can read, and it should be voted on its merits. And same thing for all these other bills. A Social Security bill should be just Social Security. Education bill should be education. And because that, and one way that we used to cure that was thinking of the line item veto, that you could say, no, I'm not allowing that, not allowing that. So the good parts of a bill can get passed in the law, but the bad parts not. But I think the cure of that is single issue bills.
Yeah, it makes more sense. I mean, Social Security is another interesting example of, you remember when Al Gore was running for office and he says, we're going to put the money in a lockbox.
In the lockbox.
Yeah, well, you know, that lockbox is still open.
Yeah.
And whenever they threaten, if we don't increase taxes, Social Security could go bankrupt.
Yeah.
It shouldn't go bankrupt.
No, it shouldn't. If it was kept in a lockbox, it shouldn't have. That's for sure. And it's projected in 2032 to only be able to pay 80% of the current claims because we borrowed from that lockbox for all these years running deficits. And so we're going to they've kicked the can down the road as much as they can. That's coming home to roost real soon.
There is a real solution to that, in my opinion. And the solution is that Congress ought to be part of Social Security instead of their own retirement bill.
Great. I agree with that.
You know,
Yeah.
if Congress suffered like we suffer, they would find a way to fix it.
That's true. And my Washington Clean Hand Act addresses that. They don't pass a budget, they don't get paid.
Perfect. John, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
This was very interesting. I hope you all enjoyed it and learned a little bit more about John Deaton running for the United States Senate. We don't know who he's going to run against yet, but whoever it is, doesn't matter. You need to vote for John Deaton. Thanks for watching.